The arrival. The rain hammered the rusted roof of St. Augustine Memorial as if trying to wash away its sins. Once a grand hospital nestled in the decaying veins of Harlem, it had been shuttered since 1983, left to rot beneath graffiti and silence. For decades, it stood like a mausoleum, untouched and undisturbed. But tonight, it had visitors. Emily Vargas adjusted the beam of her headlamp and tightened the straps of her backpack. Behind her, her boyfriend Nate recorded on his camera, the green lens light casting eerie shadows along the walls. "You sure this is the place?" he asked, brushing rain from his forehead. "Yeah," Emily said, stepping over a shattered window frame. "Coordinates match the Urban Explorer Forum. This is it." They were joined by Jules, a self-styled ghost hunter with too many tattoos and an infrared thermometer hanging from her belt, and Marcus, a quiet tech guy lugging an EMF detector and motion sensor rig. The team had come to film a paranormal documentary about the most haunted places in New York. St. Augustine Memorial had a reputation, dozens of unexplained disappearances, rumors of unethical experiments, and a fire in 1979 that consumed an entire wing. No survivors, no bodies. The front entrance had long been boarded up, but the team found a side door pried loose by vandals. Inside, mildew choked the air. The entrance hall was lined with toppled wheelchairs, overturned gurneys, and shattered glass. The floors were slick with grime and rain. Emily stepped inside first, her boots echoing in the dark. "We're in," Nate said to the camera. "Welcome to St. Augustine." Marcus scanned the area with the EMF reader. Nothing yet. Jules clicked on her audio recorder. "Any spirits here tonight? We come in peace. Feel free to say hi." They laughed nervously, the kind of laugh people use when they want to drown out the fact that they're scared. As they pushed deeper into the hospital, the lights from their equipment danced on peeling walls and faded signage. Pediatrics, ICU, burn unit. "Let's check out Ward 6 first," Emily said, holding her printed map. "That's where the fire happened." "Of course it is," Jules muttered. They navigated through half-collapsed hallways, avoiding places where the floor bowed or metal jutted like bones. Each step creaked like a protest. When they reached Ward 6, the temperature dropped sharply. "Jesus, it's freezing in here," Nate said, shivering. Jules checked her thermometer. "Dropped 10 degrees. That's fast." The ward was a long, narrow corridor lined with doorless rooms. Soot marked the ceilings. Beds remained, their frames twisted by fire. One had restraints still fastened. "Room 612, Emily read aloud. "That's where the fire started." The group stood outside the charred doorway. A strange scent wafted out. Not just smoke and rot, but something sweet, like burnt sugar. "You smell that?" Nate asked. Marcus nodded. "Weird." "I'm going in," Emily said. She stepped into room 612, headlamp swinging. Inside, scorched walls were covered in blackened handprints. Not painted, imprinted. "Oh my God," she whispered. Nate entered behind her, camera capturing everything. In the corner of the room sat a rusted bed, blackened sheets still clinging to the springs. Beneath the bed, something moved. "Wait, did you see that?" Nate said. "Yeah," Emily breathed. "Something crawled." The lights flickered. "Guys," Marcus called from the hallway, voice tight. "You need to see this." They rushed out. "The EMF's going nuts, and the motion sensor." A piercing scream erupted from behind them. Room 612 was empty, but the door had closed on its own. Part 2. Trapped Echoes. The scream died in their throats as the door to room 612 slammed shut, reverberating like a gunshot through the hospital's silent halls.
Jules dropped her recorder. That wasn't the wind. That door slammed. Emily yanked the handle. It wouldn't budge. It stuck. The morgue below. The group hesitated at the base of the stairs. A rusted door loomed ahead, the placard above it barely legible. Morgue. Authorized personnel only. Great place for a breather, Nate muttered. His voice echoed too loudly. Jules opened the door. It groaned like a dying animal. The room beyond was colder than the stairwell, their breath fogged in the air. Lights from their headlamps caught rows of body drawers, each one shut tight, except for one that hung halfway open, like a sneer. "Someone opened that," Emily said, eyeing it. "Recently." "Maybe it never closed properly," Marcus offered. But as they moved further in, they saw scratches along the inside edge of the drawer, fingernail marks, desperate and deep. "Nope," Jules whispered. "Nope, nope, nope." Marcus set the EMF detector on a steel exam table. It beeped erratically, flickering between yellow and red. Nate panned the camera slowly, capturing their breath, their shadows, and then... "Did anyone else see that?" he asked. "Something moved behind the freezer unit." They turned their lights toward the wall. Behind the industrial freezer, a space opened like a wound in the wall. Exposed brick crumbled away to reveal a passage. "That's not on the blueprint," Marcus said. "Looks like it was sealed off," Emily replied. "Someone broke through from the inside." The passage led into darkness. "We're not seriously going down there," Jules said. "We have to," Emily replied. "This is the story. No one's ever recorded this before." Nate hesitated, then nodded. "We stick together. No one wanders off." They crawled into the narrow space, their light scraping the brick. The air smelled different, coppery and old, like dried blood. It opened into a room not marked on any map. Part 5. The loop begins. They stepped out into the unnaturally clean Ward 6. The atmosphere felt sterile, oppressive. Not a speck of dust, no broken tiles. Everything looked as if the hospital had never closed. And yet, something was terribly wrong. There were no people, no sound. Only the soft buzz of fluorescent lights and the distant hum of machinery that should have long since decayed. Emily checked her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, batteries draining fast. Nate looked at his camera. Same, but it's still recording. They crept down the corridor, passing patient rooms that appeared occupied, shapes in the beds under white sheets, monitors beeping rhythmically. But none of the figures moved. No rise and fall of breath, no twitch of fingers. "Are they mannequins?" Jules whispered. Marcus leaned into one room. "No, they're real. I think they're alive, but unconscious." Suddenly, all the monitors in the hallway spiked. Sharp beeping pierced the silence. The lights dimmed and shifted to red. "Code Blue, Subject 11, escaped containment. Initiate lockdown." Doors slammed shut around them. Jules pounded on the nearest exit. "We're locked in again." Marcus checked a nearby wall panel. "There's an auxiliary stairwell in the east wing. If we can get through pediatrics, we can reach it." Great. Back through the creepy baby ward. As they moved, the walls began to distort, rippling like a heat mirage. Posters shifted between cheerful hospital art and symbols scrawled in blood. The floors flickered between linoleum and blackened ash. Emily stopped, pointing to a mirror. Her reflection didn't move. Instead, it smiled. "Guys," she said, voice shaking, "I think we're being watched." The group huddled close as they made it through the pediatrics corridor. Child-sized beds lined the walls, many with restraints. Stuffed animals, scorched and melted, sat abandoned. Some still whispered, "Help me, it hurts." Marcus held up the EMF meter. It screamed red. A door burst open. One of the patient figures from before emerged, shambling. Its skin was gray. Its eyes were sewn shut. "Run!" Emily shouted. They sprinted past it, dodging more waking patients, each more decayed and malformed than the last. The spirits were not content to be passive anymore. They burst into the east stairwell and slammed the door shut behind them. For a moment, silence returned. "How do we stop this?" Jules asked, shaking. "There has to be an end." Marcus pulled the half-burned journal from his coat. The final entry, it mentioned the loop. Greaves failed to sever the spirit's tether. The hospital became a vessel, a prison. Anyone who enters becomes part of the ritual. "So we're stuck in some kind of supernatural time loop?" Nate asked. "Unless we finish what he started, bind the spirit or destroy it." "How do we do that?" Emily asked. "There's one last place he mentioned, the observation theater, under..."
Part 7. Broken Mirrors. They climbed the stairwell back toward the upper levels, every footstep echoing too loud in the silent descent of whatever hell they'd just survived. Emily clutched Jules' hand tightly, helping her stay upright. The girl's skin was pale, her lips faintly blue, but her eyes flickered with the spark of life. "We just have to make it out," Nate said. "Front entrance is right above." Marcus stopped suddenly. "Wait, the symbols." "What?" Emily asked. He turned slowly, the color draining from his face. "They're gone. The ones I carved in the stairwell earlier to mark our way. They've been erased." "Maybe the building's just resetting again," Nate offered, though his voice was thin. They reached the first floor. The lobby, once shattered and overgrown, was pristine again. Reception desks were manned by waxy, still figures. A distant elevator dinged open, empty. "Nope," Emily whispered. "No, no, no." They stepped toward the glass doors. Sunlight streamed in through, real, golden daylight. Emily ran ahead. The doors slid open. She stepped outside, then froze. The city was gone. In its place stood endless corridors, hospital wings extending in all directions, looping around each other, shifting. Part 8. Subject 12. Darkness swallowed them whole. The hum of the building grew louder, more organic, like the slow heartbeat of something waking up. "Flashlights," Marcus called, but the beam of his device flickered and died. Red emergency lights strobed faintly to life. In their flickering, they saw the waxy receptionists begin to move, slow, twitching steps toward them. Nate stumbled backward, clutching his neck. "It burns! It's burning!" Emily reached for him, but Marcus pulled her back. "He's marked. She's inside him now." Jules coughed, still weak, and whispered, "What do we do?" The PA crackled again. "Subject 12 unstable, preparing containment protocol." Glass panels slammed down from the ceiling, separating them from Nate. He screamed, pounding on the barrier. Behind him, shadows coalesced into a tall, female figure, laughing softly. Subject 11. "You gave me the door. Now you'll hold it open." The stitches on Nate's neck split, revealing glowing veins spreading across his skin. His eyes turned black. "Marcus!" yelled Emily. "There has to be a way to break the tether." Marcus frantically flipped through the journal. "We can't unbind him, but we can sever the loop again." "How?" asked Jules. "Destroy the source, the original object that bound her, Greaves' focus, his relic. It has to still be here." They turned toward the glass wall. Part 9. A Hollow Dawn. The light returned slowly, flickering like the first breath after drowning. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. Emily coughed, pushing charred splinters off her chest. "Everyone okay?"
Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. Jules groaned. "Alive, I think." Emily sat up. The chapel was gone. They now stood in the hospital lobby. But it was no longer the endless maze. Outside the glass doors, New York City returned, battered but real. The skyline was hazy in the morning sun. "We're back," Jules whispered. "Really back." Nate was gone. Emily turned toward where the glass barrier had sealed him in. Just a scorch mark remained, charred tile and a single cracked lens from his camera. "We left him," she said, voice tight. Marcus shook his head. "He chose. He was already—" "Don't!" she snapped. Jules walked to the exit. The door slid open with a hiss. Warm air rushed in. Sirens could be heard in the distance. Life moved outside. They stepped through together, blinking into the light. Behind them, the hospital groaned. Glass cracked in slow waves across every surface. As they watched, the entire building shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. "What's happening?" Jules asked. "It's unraveling."
Part 10. The pattern deepens. Emily and Marcus sat in a library tucked beneath the New York Historical Society, one of the few quiet, unconnected places they could find. Heavy books lined the walls, their spines cracked with age. Jules sat at a laptop nearby, hacking through encrypted university records. Some of Greaves' personal letters were forwarded to a private donor, name redacted, but the location? Connecticut, a place called Ridgewood. "Why does that sound familiar?" Emily asked. Marcus flipped through the notebook he'd given her weeks ago. "Because it showed up in one of the dream sequences. Here." He tapped a page with a hand-drawn map and the word Ridgewood scrawled beside it. "She left a thread." Jules turned the screen toward them. "I think it's an estate, isolated, owned by a trust connected to a defunct psychiatric network." Emily's stomach dropped. Another hospital? Or the place where this started? Greaves was never acting alone. His work, rituals, dimensional bindings. It wasn't academic. It was part of something larger. A faint buzz filled the room. Jules tapped her headphones. "Did you hear that?" The buzz grew louder, low and resonant.
Part 11. The Echo House. The Ridgewood Estate's front door gave way with a moan that echoed through the surrounding forest. Beyond it, a grand foyer lay draped in plastic sheets, as if the house were trying to preserve the rot. "It's like it's waiting for us," Jules murmured. Emily walked to the center of the foyer, eyes fixed on a massive spiral staircase that climbed upward into shadow. "Or it knows we've been here before." Marcus ran a hand along the wallpaper, fingers tracing invisible symbols beneath its surface. "There's residue here, ritual marks. They're buried, but not gone." Jules swept her flashlight around. The beam passed over dust-covered portraits, faces that seemed too detailed, too real. One of them looked eerily like Greaves. "Stairs or basement?" Emily asked. "Always the basement," Marcus replied, forcing a smile. They found the entrance to the lower levels behind a pantry door. Stone steps led downward into darkness that pressed against their flashlights like oil. Halfway down, they found a wall etched with thousands of names. Jules brushed off a patch of grime. Her voice caught. "They're patients from Ridgewood and Ward 6. One name glowed faintly beneath her touch. Nathaniel Carr. Emily froze. Nate. Below them, a door creaked open on its own. They entered a wide chamber, domed and vaulted, filled with machinery that hummed to life as they stepped in. Red lights blinked in a circular pattern. In the center, a large steel...
Part 12. What remains? The Ridgewood estate was gone by the time the emergency crews arrived. Only scorched earth remained where the great house had stood. No fire, no smoke, just silence. Emily sat on the bumper of an ambulance, her hand still shaking. Jules was being looked at by EMTs. Marcus paced nearby, phone in hand. None of them could explain what had happened, and none of them tried. The mirrors had worked, but something about the moment lingered. Subject 11 had known them, remembered their past loops. That realization sent cold needles through Emily's spine. Jules sat down beside her, holding a foil blanket close. "She said I was the echo. What does that mean?" Emily shook her head. "I think it means you survived something before, a version of this. Maybe you didn't make it in the last loop. Maybe we didn't either. But then who started it again?" Marcus joined them. The ritual is cyclical. Greaves tapped into something ancient, something that uses people to feed on trauma, fear.
Part 13. Beneath the Static. 3 weeks later, they were in Iceland. Not for the scenery, though it was otherworldly. Glaciers, black sand beaches, silent volcanoes, but because one of the sites Marcus identified pulsed with energy, far from civilization. An abandoned radio observatory, shut down in the late 1980s after a series of inexplicable employee disappearances. Emily stared at the rusted dome rising from the snowfield. "You feel it too?" Jules nodded, like we're being listened to. Marcus adjusted the scanning device in his hand, an array built from salvaged tech and mirror shards. It clicked softly as it passed over the entrance. The signal's active. Same frequency as the chapel, but cleaner, less corrupted. Inside, the observatory was a hollow cathedral. Walls of decaying equipment surrounded a central array like a metal altar. In the center, an analog terminal still blinked, running on something they couldn't explain. The screen flared to life. Ward 6, open. Gateway Sigma, stable. Stand by for integration. Jules backed up. "It's calling us in." Emily stepped toward the terminal. "Then let's answer." The lights dimmed.
Part 14. Through the mirror. There was no falling, only the sensation of being turned inside out, pulled across dimensions threaded with memory and fear. When they awoke, it wasn't in the observatory. It was the hospital, but not how they remembered it. Ward 6 gleamed, sterile white, pristine, humming softly like a living lung. Nurses moved down long corridors in silence, faces blank. The world felt stretched, like a set built for something watching from behind the walls. Emily sat up on a gurney. "It's rebuilt." Jules emerged from a nearby room, dazed. "I saw my mother. She was here. She said I died in this place." Marcus checked his watch. The hand spun wildly. "Time isn't stable. This is the recursion's core." A voice echoed overhead, mechanical and calm. "Welcome to Treatment Loop 4A. Emotional recalibration in progress. Please remain still." Figures emerged, orderlies, smooth-skinned and doll-like. They walked toward the trio with outstretched hands. Emily shouted, "Run!" They burst through double doors and into an endless corridor. The world shifted as they moved, walls bending, looping, memories flashing across glass panels embedded in the floor. Part 15. Ash and Signal. The stillness held for only a breath. Then the walls of Ward 6 began to dissolve, not with violence, but like paper soaked in rain. Colors bleeding, reality unspooling. The candle's light pulsed brighter until it overtook the room, swallowing everything in white. Emily woke beneath a gray sky. She was lying in the ruins of the Ridgewood estate. Burned beams surrounded her, the earth blackened. No Marcus,
No Jules, just the cold wind and silence. She sat up slowly, heart pounding. The mirror shard rested beside her, whole, no longer glowing. A sound cut the air. Static. She followed it to a small, battery-powered radio half buried in the rubble. It clicked on with a life of its own, spewing distorted whispers. Loop broken, interference, echoes fall.